Good morning, Year 9. Hope you are all well. Welcome to today's maths lesson. Let's start off with a quick starter, shall we? Can you work out 3/5 plus 2/7? Then can you work out 6,504 divided by 12? Solve this inequality for me. -2 subtract -4. What's that going to give you? Can you write 0.809 in standard form? If 34% of x is 0.68, can you find x? And at the bottom, there's an extension question from a GCSE paper to have a go at. Start by expanding those brackets. That's my top tip for that question. Please pause the video and in your light blue books or on your mini whiteboards or on just a scrap piece of paper, please have a go at these questions now. Spend about 5 minutes on them. Off you go. Okie dokie, I'm going to run through the answers. So for the first one, you need to make the denominators the same, and that will give you 31 over 35. If you've done a bus stop division for the second one, you'll have got 542. If you solve this inequality just like you would an equation, you'd start by subtracting 2 from both sides, which will give you 3x is less than 9, and then dividing by 3 tells you x is less than 3. And that's your final answer. For the next one, I've got -2 subtract -4. Well, two negatives in a row make a positive, so that's -2 plus 4, which will give me +2. For the next question, I can choose the number 8.09 as my number before the standard form, and then I've got 8.09 times 10 to the -1. So that all those numbers move one position on the place value table. If 34% of a number is 0.68, that number must be 2. And finally, if you'd expanded those two brackets, that would give you 8n cubed plus 2n cubed, and both of those parts are cube numbers, therefore n must be a cube number. Okay, we're going to head into the diagnostic quiz. So 5 questions A, B, C or D. On your mini whiteboards or in your rough books, I'll go through the answers at the end. Question number 1 for me. What is the volume of this cuboid in meters cubed? You're welcome to pause the video if you need a little bit of extra time. Question number 2. Which of the following calculations would work out the volume of this shape? Again, pause the video if you need some extra time. Question number 3. Isaac is trying to solve the pair of simultaneous equations on the right. He decides to add them together. What will he end up with? By adding them together, he's removing h, this variable here. What will he end up with? Question number 4 for me. A blue cuboid is constructed that's half the volume of the green cuboid shown. Which is the correct cuboid? Which of these blue cuboids has half the volume of the green one? And finally, question number 5. If 4 cups of tea and 2 cups of coffee cost £3.90 and 2 cups of tea and 3 cups of coffee cost £3.45, what is the cost of a cup of tea and a cup of coffee? Set that up as 2 simultaneous equations and solve them for me. Okie dokie, I'm going to go through the answers. Question number 1, the volume of that cuboid, well 50 centimetres is 0.5 metres, 200 centimetres is 2 metres, and 0.2 metres is just 0.2 metres. 0.2 times 2 times 0.5 will give me D, 0.2. Question number 2, to work out the area of this triangle, I do 12 times 5 divided by 2, and then I need to multiply that by the length, which is 10, so the correct answer was A. For question number 3, if we add together those two equations, 2g plus 5g gives me 7g, 3h plus -3h gives me no lots of h, we've removed that variable, and then 12 take away 3 gives me 9, so the correct answer was B. For question number 4, the answer I was looking for was A. And for question number 5, if you'd set those up as 2 simultaneous equations, you'll get the cup of tea is 60p and the cup of coffee is 75p. Let's head into today's lesson. I'm going to start by recapping simplification of surds. So we had a rule. We said that the square root of AB, or the square root of a number A times a number B, is the same as the square root of that number A times the square root of B. So we can split up numbers underneath surds in this way. So I am going to start off by looking for the largest number that's a square number and a factor of 20. I can write the square root of 20 as the square root of 4, a square number, times 5. I can split this up using my rule and say, well, that's the same as the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. 4 is a square number and the square root of 4 is 2, so I can write that as 2 lots of the square root of 5. I can approach the next one in the same way. I need to start by finding the largest number that's a square number and a factor of 27. In this case it's going to be 9, so I can write that as the square root of 9 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. Now the square root of 9 is 3, so I've now got 3 times the square root of 3 times the square root of 3. But I can put these two square roots of 3 together, so I can write that as 3 lots of the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is just 3, and 3 times 3 is going to give me 9. For the last one, I need the largest number that's a square number and a factor of 8. In this case it's 4. So I can write that as the square root of 4 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 6. The square root of 4 is 2, so I've got 2 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 6. I can use my rule backwards to put together the square root of 2 and the square root of 6. So that's 2 lots of the square root of 12. I can split 12 into its two factors 4 and 3. So I can write that as 2 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 3. The square root of 4 is 2. So overall that gives me 4 lots of the square root of 3. Over to you guys. In your light blue books or on your mini whiteboards, please pause the video for 5 to 10 minutes and have a go at as many of these questions as you can. The red ones are a little bit easier, the yellow ones are a bit trickier, and then there's some extension questions to have a think about if you finish. Pause the video and spend 10 minutes on these questions now, please. And the answers are up on the board. Please check your work and see how you did. Okay, we're going to look at using the rule again, but in a slightly different way. These surds have already been simplified, but we can simplify them further. And we know this because there's a square number that's a factor of 40, and that's 4. So I can write this first one as 5 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 10. The square root of 4 is 2, so I can write that as 5 times 2 times the square root of 10. 5 times 2 is 10, so that's going to give me 10 lots of the square root of 10. And I know that's fully simplified because there aren't any square numbers that are a factor of 10. For the next one, I can write that as 3 lots of the square root of 100 times the square root of 2. The square root of 100 is 10, so now I've got 30 square root of 2. And that's fully simplified. There's no square numbers that are a factor of 2. Over to you guys. In your light blue books or on your mini whiteboards, Please pause the video for 5 to 10 minutes and have a go at these questions now. If you are confident, have a go at filling out my multiplication squares at the bottom. And these are the answers. Please check your work and see how you did. Okay, we're going to move on to something new now. We're going to look at adding and subtracting surds. Now, adding and subtracting surds works in the same way as algebra. So if I've got 2 apples and I add on 3 apples, altogether I've got 5 apples. So let's look at numbers. If I've got 2 lots of 10 and I add on 3 lots of 10, in the same way as it did with the apples, that's going to give me 5 lots of 10. How about algebra? If I've got 2 lots of x and I add on 3 lots of x, I've now got 5 lots of x. I can write that a little bit simpler. I can say 2x plus 3x is equal to 5x, or 5 lots of x. Now, adding surds and subtracting surds works in exactly the same way. If I've got 2 lots of the square root of 5 and I add on 3 lots of the square root of 5, I'm going to have 5 square root 5. If I've got 3 lots of the square root of 5 and I subtract 2 lots of the square root of 5, I'm going to have 1 lot of the square root of 5. Dark blue book's out for me. Can you write me the title, Adding Surds, and the date? And then I'm going to go through 3 examples, and then there's 3 for you to do in your dark blue neat books. Let's look at my first example. I've got 2 square root 5 and I add on 5 square root 5. So altogether I've got 2 plus 5 lots of the square root of 5, so 7 lots of the square root of 5. For my second example, my surds are different. The square root of 20 and the square root of 5 are different numbers, so I can't directly add them. However, I can simplify this first surd to give me something that's a square root of 5. I can write this first one as 2 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 5, because 4 times 5 is 20. Now the square root of 4 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4, so I've got 4 square root 5 plus 5 square root 5, which altogether means I've got 9 lots of the square root of 5. The one underneath looks a little bit different, but I'm going to start by simplifying that first one. I simplified that to 2 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. And there isn't a square number that's a factor of 10, so I'm going to leave that one as it is. So as the square root of 4 is 2, I can write that as 2 times 2 times the square root of 5 plus 5 lots of the square root of 10. 2 times 2 is 4. So my final answer is 4 square root 5 plus 5 lots of the square root of 10. Now this looks a little bit funny because you've got a square root of 5 and a square root of 10. It looks a bit unusual, but there are no square numbers that are a factor of 10, so this is fully simplified. You cannot simplify this any further. Over to you guys in your dark blue books. Here's 3 questions for you to do in the same way. Please pause the video for 5 minutes and have a go at these. Okay, I'll go through the answers. I've got 2 lots of the square root of 6 and I add on 5 lots of the square root of 6. So altogether for that first one, I've got 7 lots of the square root of 6. For the second one, I've got 2 square root 54 plus 5 square root 6. I can simplify this and I can write the first one as 2 times the square root of 9 times the square root of 6. And then I can add on 5 lots of the square root of 6. The square root of 9 is 3, so I've got 2 times 3, which gives me 6 lots of the square root of 6. I then add on 5 lots of the square root of 6. 6 plus 5 gives me 11, so I've got 11 lots of the square root of 6. And for my last example, I can simplify 2 square root 20. I can write that as 2 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 5 plus 5 square root 15 Now the square root of 4 is 2, so I've now got 2 times 2, which is 4. 4 square root 5 plus 5 square root 15. And again, it looks a little bit unusual, but I cannot simplify that any further because there are no square numbers that are a factor of 15. So that is my final answer. Over to you guys in your light blue books. Please pause the video for 5 to 10 minutes and have a go at as many of these questions as you can. Pause the video now. And the answers are up on the board. Please check your work and see how you did. Okay, I'm going to quickly run through subtracting surds. It works in exactly the same way as adding surds. We're just subtracting this time. I'll go through one example and then there's one for you to do in your dark blue books for me. So I need to work out the square root of 48, subtract the square root of 27. I'm going to start by simplifying both of those terms. I need a square number that's a factor of 48. Well, 16 goes into 48 3 times, so I can write that as the square root of 3 times the square root of 16. And I know 9 goes into 27, so I can write that one as the square root of 3 times the square root of 9. So simplifying it, the square root of 16 is 4, so I've got 4 lots of the square root of 3. The square root of 9 is 3, so I'm subtracting 3 lots of the square root of 3. 4 lots of the square root of 3 take away 3 lots of the square root of 3 gives me 1 lot of the square root of 3. Over to you guys in your dark blue books. Please pause the video for a couple of minutes and work out this one for me. Rightio, I'll go through the answer. So I know 100 is a square number that's a factor of 300. So I can split up this first term into the square root of 3 times the square root of 100. And I know 25 is a square number that's a factor of 75. So I can write this second term as the square root of 3 times the square root of 25. Now the square root of 100 is 10. So I can write this first part as 10 lots of the square root of 3. The square root of 25 is 5, so I can write this second part as 5 lots of the square root of 3. 10 lots of the square root of 3 subtract 5 lots of the square root of 3 will leave me with 5 lots of the square root of 3. Over to you guys in your light blue books. Please pause the video for 10 to 15 minutes and have a go at these questions for me. You're welcome to start where you like, either on the bronze, silver, gold, or if you're feeling super confident, have a go at my platinum questions. Pause the video now. And the answers are up on the board. Please check your work and see how you did. And that's the end of today's lesson. Please head on over to Google Classroom and submit today's exit ticket so I can review your learning for today. Thanks very much for listening, Year 9, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.